Hallo, mich haben viele Fragen erreicht zu dem ersten Teil der mündlichen Prüfung. Wie genau man sich den vorstellen muss, wie man die Überleitung macht von der einen zur nächsten Aufgabe und so weiter. Und da dachte ich, vielleicht ist es mal interessant für euch zu sehen, wie ich sowas jetzt mit meinem Wissen lösen würde. Und dafür habe ich mal selber mir so eine Prüfung gemacht und die durchgemacht. Zugegeben, ich kannte schon den Text, also da hatte ich einen großen Vorteil. Aber ich habe mich wirklich mal hingesetzt, habe die halbe Stunde Vorbereitungszeit genutzt und mir Notizen gemacht und werde mit diesen Notizen jetzt einmal den ersten Teil der mündlichen Prüfung euch vorsprechen und euch eine Art Musterlösung geben. Dabei gibt es natürlich folgende Sachen zu beachten. Erstmal, ich bin ein Lehrer und habe einiges an Erfahrung, also sollte das natürlich einiges besser sein, als ihr das könnt. Lasst euch dafür nicht entmutigen. Wenn ich nicht besser wäre als ihr nach all den Jahren, in denen ich das geübt habe, dann wäre es ganz schön traurig. Das andere ist, auch ich mache auf der anderen Seite natürlich hier und da einen Fehler. Also es wird auf keinen Fall perfekt sein. Trotzdem denke ich, als Orientierung kann einem das vielleicht helfen. Wenn man hat ja noch nie so eine mündliche Prüfung gesehen in der Regel, wenn man nicht gerade irgendwo mal bei jemandem mitgehen konnte. Und so könnt ihr euch ein bisschen vielleicht vorstellen, wie kann man das strukturieren, wie macht man sich Notizen, wie stellt man die Notizen dann vor. Und los geht's! So, the text I've been given is an excerpt from the 4th of July address from the White House by President Obama, given in 2009. And in this traditional 4th of July address, it's directed towards the nation, so he's basically speaking to all Americans. It is usually done on the 4th of July because the 4th of July is Independence Day, a national holiday. And here in this excerpt, the main idea of what he's saying is that he wants to remind Americans of this unique American spirit that will help them overcome the challenges that America faces today. Let me start with task 1, so to explain the significance of this 4th of July here in the excerpt, and then go into more detail on the main ideas or the main idea of this address. Now, first of all, Obama starts and greets his audience and talks about how this can be a weekend with the family. So the 4th of July aspect of like a national holiday that you simply celebrate. But then he also asks his audience to reflect on what this means. And then he goes on to say that Americans should remember the history of this 4th of July and how unlikely it was that this small group of patriots, of Americans back then, gained independence from Britain and was able to establish a democratic government. And he continues to describe this unique American spirit that is able to overcome difficulties and difficult situations, so that when Americans are faced with difficulties historically, they have been able to overcome them. And then in a last step, he says that today there are also many unique challenges facing Americans, and that Americans will be able to overcome them and should face them with the same unique American spirit that other Americans have had in the past. So that is the basic idea of this address. Let me move on to task number 2, which asked to analyze the text. And now, in this text, Obama uses the structure, he uses some stylistic devices, he uses persuasive strategies to appeal to the audience and to give them hope and tell them that they can face these challenges with the American spirit that the nation has, and that they will overcome the challenges facing them today. So he is truly trying to motivate Americans and to give them hope and to unite them as a nation. Let's look at the devices Obama uses to do this. Now, let's look at structure first. Now, he has structured his text, well, the excerpt I have here, we can basically structure into the 4 paragraphs we have here on the page. The first one is a greeting, so first of all tries to establish a relationship and make the listeners feel welcome, and sort of doesn't right away start with anything difficult or technical. Then he goes on to reflect on history, so sort of he looks back, he says let's reflect, let's remind ourselves, etc. So thinking of history. And then out of this history he describes like a typical American spirit that he sees. And in the 3rd paragraph, he describes the spirit of facing obstacles and finally overcoming obstacles. In the last paragraph, sort of he applies this to today and says, today we're also facing challenges and we will also overcome them because we have this spirit and because we will work together as a nation. And so this is how, from the greeting through history, the spirit to today, sort of like a very intelligent structure that helps to let the audience follow him in his thoughts. He uses some interesting stylistic devices. The first one, and I think this is to me the most striking one, is the number of times that the second person plural, so we or us, is used. So we have this in line 5, we are called, and we have it throughout the text numerous times. Just another line is line 16, that is the spirit we are called to show once more we are facing an array of challenges, etc., etc. The use of this inclusive we makes the reader feel included. So you're not listening to this and thinking, okay, he's talking about another group, I'm not part of this, but you're absolutely included in this group he's talking to. So you feel how you belong to this group as an American, of course. Then there are a number of anaphras, so where sentences are structured similarly. One that I will start off here with is in line 16. We have, this is the spirit we are called to show once more. And then we are facing, we are waging, we are battling. So this we are is repeated, of course, to emphasize that we are doing something together. And likewise, we have in line 10 and the following lines 11, 12 and 13, the repetition of the structure, it is. So it is what led generations, it is what led my grandparents, it is, etc., what has always led us. So the structure is repeated to make the point about this spirit, that this is the same spirit that has done a number of things. There are also, he uses allusions, he alludes to the Declaration of Independence, and we can see the first part of this allusion in line 8, small band of patriots would declare independence, and in line 9, a government of, by and for the people, which is of course an allusion to the Declaration of Independence, where similar words or some of the same words actually are used. Then we have also the use of images. For example, he says in line 14 and line 13 and 14, it is what has always led us as a people not to wilt or cower. So sort of that what Americans do when faced with challenges is not to duck down and to sort of withdraw, but to face the challenges head on and try to overcome them. This is a strong image, I find, to make clear what Americans are not like. And interpreted in that way, it's also an antithesis. So we Americans, we do not wilt or cower at a difficult moment, but we will face down any trial and rise to any challenge. So very strong image of what Americans are not and what Americans as opposed to this R. Let's talk finally, as a last part of my analysis, about the strategies that Obama uses to persuade his audience to work together as a nation, to have hope, to overcome the challenges facing them today. First of all, one of the striking strategies is that right away in the first paragraph, he greets them, and when he greets them, he says, "And I hope," in line 2, "I hope that's exactly what all of you do, but I also want to take a moment," etc. So he uses the first person pronoun I to talk about himself, and then you, and addresses the audience. So he establishes like a personal relationship of a person talking to other people and them having a connection, and doesn't make himself too distant. So tries to include himself with the people, show he's one of the people. And this I find a very striking strategy. So the use of pronouns here in this first paragraph, which is also of course a direct address of the audience, which is also a device. So what all of you do, so he's directly addressing the people listening to him. Then I think it's also important to see that he uses examples from his personal life. So, for example, in line 11, he says, "It is what led my grandparents' generation," etc. So talking about showing that his grandparents were also of that generation, that it is personal for him. So that it's also a technique he uses. One of the more important things I find also in terms of strategies is that he shows all the obstacles that have already been overcome by Americans. So he says that pioneers, in line 10-11, pioneers blaze a westward trail. So this whole continent has been settled by us, and this wasn't easy. And he talks about the depression, economic depression in the 1920s, in line 12. And he talks about an industrial economy in line 13, etc. So he shows we Americans, we have done a number of things, and we're really strong, and we are really good at this. Let me move on to task number 3. In task number 3, I was supposed to comment on the statement that Obama's career shows that the American dream is alive today. And now I think this statement, of course, needs to have, one needs to explain the American dream first. What does the American dream mean? And the American dream is, of course, a very big and difficult concept, but I think for this context here, we can reduce it to the idea that there is equality, and that this equality enables you, if you work hard and if you really try, to better yourself economically or in terms of your position, and to succeed in life, and to attain happiness. And there's also the image of like your own house with your own car and your own fridge, etc. So this is the basic concept of the American dream. And the question here that I'm asked to comment on is this dream alive today? So does it work today? And let's look at some arguments, because I think that you cannot answer it with a simple yes or no. Obviously, you need to look at some contrasting facts, basically. Let's first look at a fact that would tell us that yes, it is alive today. Well, obviously, that Obama, a black person, could become president shows that there is still this spirit and there's still this idea. You don't have to be white, you're equal even if you're black. You don't have to be from a family that has been important in the country, like you could argue for the Bush presidents, a family that has been important for a long time in this country, and you can still make it. Yeah? And you don't have to be hugely rich. Obama is not a person that came from a rich family, etc. So that is true. Also, it is true that in law in America, people are equal, and it doesn't matter what your rank or your position is. And it's furthermore true that we have lots of self-made millionaires or even billionaires. So people who simply worked hard, had the right strategies, put in a lot of effort, were very successful because of that. On the other hand, of course, even Obama personally, he did not come from an extremely difficult background either. He had a good education. And this is a problem because many people do not have access to this good education. And what makes this problem worse is that some of the minorities, for example, black people, have even less access to good education, and this in turn makes it hard for them to rise through society and to get a good position in society. And even though Obama could become president, that doesn't mean that there is no racism anymore. There are numerous studies that show that for a black person, on average, it is a lot more difficult to do a number of things like go to college, have their own house, etc. So the statistics show that it's not an equal position that they're in a white person and a black person in America. The black person would still be disadvantaged. So even though Obama has made it, doesn't mean that for all Americans this is true. Also, in historical trends, we can see that this idea of you only have to work hard and you will be rich, you will get a good job, this is becoming more difficult for a number of factors, but one of them again is education. One of them is how taxes often prefer rich people, and the kind of money that rich people make is even taxed less, etc. So that we have a widening gap often between rich and poor. So that also shows that there is a problem with this idea of the American dream. In conclusion then, I would say that the idea of an American dream is still alive. Yes, people think about it, people know about it, Americans know about it. It's like an ideal that people try to reach. But is it something that is true in reality all the time and applies? I think obviously not. I think the American dream should be seen as an ideal, something that people strive towards, and something that society or the American society tries to reach, but that can maybe never or probably never completely be reached. Mann, ganz schön stressig so eine Prüfung. Ich hoffe aber natürlich, euch hat es ein bisschen geholfen. Ich kann immer nur den Tipp geben, sich keine Panik zu machen. Das ist auf jeden Fall zu schaffen. Die Lehrer wollen euch helfen, die Lehrer wollen, dass ihr gute Noten kriegt. Sich natürlich vorzubereiten, das mal zu üben. Wie ich es jetzt gemacht habe, am besten mal mit irgendeinem Text, einer alten Klausur, einfach selber mal eine Prüfung durchmachen, zu überlegen, wie mache ich überhaupt Notizen, wie leite ich vom ersten Teil zu dem nächsten und so weiter. Dann sollte das alles gut klappen. Ich wünsche euch auf jeden Fall viel Erfolg, ihr schafft das. Und falls ihr nochmal Material zu den Themen Englisch oder Sport braucht, schaut euch natürlich gerne auf meinem Kanal um, da ist noch eine Menge. Macht's gut!